And it wasn't like it was long or drawn out over several chapters, but they did string you out for a couple there, and it was really nice to see that bowling ball get his ass handed to him. One Piece, chapter 250, The Ball Dragon.
What? Whose balls are dragging?
Oh boy, it's getting thick. I love it. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and the godly and the fervent tale, I think that might be a new word, if it even is a word, of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with really a number of different things happening, but starting and ending with the battle between Gonfall, the Sky Knight, and Shura, one of the four priests of Enel, and really it looking like at the end, well, of course, the Sky Knight taking a piercing blow. Got a dirty mind. Shura did jab him with his javelin, his spear, and put it in his chest, and it came out his back. After he did something with this string challenge, and Gonfall could not move. So that's how the chapter ended up, with it just kind of being like, oh shit. And that's where the chapter picks up. Gonfall has been beaten, at least temporarily, it looks like. He's falling backwards, and he falls off his bird, Pierre, into the river down below. And then you have Shura just kind of making fun of him and just being the typical dick that he is. Just kind of a really despicable type of villain, because you just look at him and you just want to grab him, just slap the shit out of him. But that's okay, though. That's just my personal feeling. Maybe you handle anxiety and things like that different. But that's just my way of handling things sometimes. So not all the time, but with certain people, they just need a good, and then. Anyway, not to be mistaken for a different type of slapping. Anyway, we'll get into that in another video. So he's, obviously Gonfall, he falls into the river, and Chopper's like, oh no, I'm gonna go save him. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, what is your dude? You cannot swim in that. You cannot swim in any type of water, okay? It's obviously you're a devil fruit user, but he's obviously it's his, he feels like it's his duty to go in to save him. So he goes and dives in after him. As he dives in, and then even the Shura's like, you're a zone devil fruit user, and zone type devil fruit user, and what the hell are you, stupid? And then Pierre the bird goes to go in after him too, right? Well, we know that he's eating a devil fruit that lets him change into the Pegasus type horse thing, the horse fruit, So I'm thinking, oh my God, as if not just adding insult to injury. So they both go to dive in, and he winds up, it looks like he goes and actually nails Pierre, hits Pierre to knock him in there. So all three of them are gone, And then he goes and he's going to fly off, and he's just like, I wonder about the other three, if anybody's caught them yet, And he goes and he says, normally it wouldn't be a big deal if it was a bottomless river, but there is a bottom to this river. So we know that obviously it kind of falls out to somewhere else in Skypiea, and that's how we're kind of left over there. Now, that, although depressing as it is, then goes and gets into the meat and potatoes of the chapter, which is, the chapter is entitled Ball Dragon for a reason, and it winds up going back to Sanji, Luffy, and Usopp fighting against Satori in this other area for the ball challenge. So we go and we see that it's funny because, of course, Sanji had been kind of knocked out. We didn't know what happened to him. We presume that he's hurt or wounded, whatever. And Luffy and Usopp are still alive. Usopp goes, it's hilarious because he's laying on the ground and he's just like, oh, I can't take any more, too many more scares. My heart just can't take. So it isn't as if he's gotten beaten and bloodied, and taken some of the attacks and some of the hits that Luffy has, or even Sanji. But I just always enjoy Usopp for his comedic relief, just always the coward, but at the same time, he really does rise to the occasion when necessary. So it's kind of neat to see that dynamic with him, you know what I mean? So, and all the complaining he does about everything. So he goes in and he sees the shit. Well, first of all, Usopp's kind of laying out there, and then Luffy is going to go, and he's pissed off at Satori. So he's just like, I'm going to take you out. And he goes to nail him again, and he misses as usual and gets hit, And then this guy, and then he goes and he comes out at him with this ball dragon, and it looks kind of like one of those Chinese dragons that they have, you see during the Chinese New Year in Chinatown when they're having the big celebration, and there's like the big cool looking like dragon's head thing, and it's all like a paper mache thing, and there's people underneath it walking around with it. Well, this one's like the head looks like that, and then the rest are all his balls, all the different balls attached to it. I don't know how to do this without it being dirty sounding. And he explains that they're mystery balls. There's one of them that's this fireball that causes a chain reaction to all the other ones, but then there's blade balls, there's smelly balls, there's all different types of balls, whatever, right? And so this thing comes at him, this dragon comes floating at Luffy or whatever, and Luffy's running like hell. And as he does that, Usopp takes that chance to go and sneak away, and even says sneak, and go sneak away. And he winds up climbing up to a higher tree, and he looks and sees where the ship is going, and he also goes and sees, he says, okay, that makes sense. We dropped from a high place to get into this area, so the exit's going to be on the same level, the same plane, as things. There's kind of down in this area, this basin of the forest, so to speak, and this weaves through, and he's like, okay, but, I got to get to the ship, otherwise it's not going to matter, blah, blah, blah. And so he's taking care of his deal, right? And Luffy's over there running like hell from the dragon, and it's funny because Luffy's running from it. It's right hot on his tail, and Luffy goes and like runs up a tree and kind of goes and does a backflip. And as he goes and does a backflip in midair, he goes and grabs onto it and sees that this thing's being pulled and controlled by a string, right? So he goes and grabs onto the string, and of course Satori's like, what are you doing, Because now all of a sudden, the lipsticks come off the pig. And by that I mean that it's all about the smoke and mirrors, man. You can put lipstick on a pig, right, and like dress it up and everything, but at the end of the day, it's still just a pig. The lipstick's eventually going to come off the pig. You're eventually going to figure out that it's a ruse, it's bullshit, it's nonsense. So that's where that whole thing comes from. So Luffy goes and he has the string, and he goes and he snaps it, So then Satori, who's standing or sitting on one of these round ball clouds or whatever there, and he's a big bowling ball too, goes and pulls on the string that he's like, well, you can't do that. And he pulls on the string that Luffy is attached to, thinking he'll pull him over to him, thinking that the logical person would let go of the other string with the exploding fireballs and everything else, the dragon thing, right? Luffy? Fuck no! He's got one in each hand. So as he as Satori pulls and kind of yanks him towards him, now that momentum's coming towards him, he's like, whoa, no, hold on, let go of the other one, So Luffy doesn't, of course, comes flying at him, pulls the dragon into him, and just a gigantic explosion, And actually, that's when you wind up seeing Usopp up in the tree after that, because he's making all his deductions. Then he's like, I better get this figured out soon, because, that explosion didn't seem good, So I hope the guys are all right. So then it's cool because the next thing we see Satori, and he's just like, oh, damn fool. Almost, that was close. He almost killed me, He almost killed me, but he killed himself or whatever he's explaining, that maybe that was his whole thing that he was going to do to begin with. And then all of a sudden you see Luffy, and he's wrapped around Satori, right? With his arms, and he's just like right up in his face, like in his personal space, in that 6 inches or foot of personal space you like to have, He's just right up there, and he's just like, whew, that was close. And he's like, you idiot! So Luffy won't let go of him. He's got his arms wrapped around him. So you can use all the mantra power you want in the world, buddy, but he's not letting you go. And it's funny because then you go and you see sitting over on one of these other balls, you see Sanji sitting there, right? The shadow of him. And he's going to light up a smoke because, it's okay to chain smoke, even despite the Surgeon General's warning. Doesn't matter if you're around flammable stuff and gas. He's fucking Sanji. He can do it, right? So he lights up his smoke, and he's just looking a little beaten and bloody. And Luffy's like, oh, great, Sanji, you're alive? He's like, yeah, I almost wasn't, and thanks to you. So he's sitting on this ball, and he goes and he explains to him about, all I hear, and he's talking to, well, first of all, he tells Luffy, he says, don't let go of that bowling ball, that, that round idiot, whatever, right? And Satori's going, now he's starting to freak out, and he's just like, well, you can't attack, it's 2-on-1, that's not fair. But he goes into this whole thing, and it's funny because Sanji goes and tells him about, all I hear is your nonsense about the challenge this and challenge that and blah, blah, blah. And all I really know is that there's 2 damsels in distress. Obviously he's referring to Robin and Nami. And that's what I have to do, is I have to take care of them, As a matter of fact, I had the last couple of pages or whatever. So, and he goes, and he's talking to him about, I just love the whole thing, He's like, anyway, dumpling guy, you keep rambling and harping about challenge this, challenge that. Frankly, I couldn't care less about your stupid rules, which I enjoy. But considering that there are a couple of damsels waiting for me to rescue them, I accept your so-called priest challenge. But you should know, I have my own challenge. And then he's got the real serious Sanji face, a love challenge. And Satori's like, what the hell, is he crazy too? And it's just great, and hey, you guys, not fair, it's 2 against 1. And then he starts going and throwing out all these different things that are going to happen to him, and it's real funny because you can tell whenever somebody, just like Wapple before he's getting his ass kicked, I'll make you this, I'll make you vice king, everything else. Satori knows, he can see with his little mantra power that he's about to get his dick pounded, and not in a good way. It's not going to be good at all for him, and he can obviously sense that and see that he's going to be beaten. And it's kind of cool because he starts throwing up all these different threats. You can't do this, you can't do that. If you go and you do something to a priest, you'll be a class 1 criminal. You'll be this, you'll be that. We'll put you in jail. We'll hurt you real bad. And it's all these idle threats because now he knows that his time has come. His time is up. So, which was kind of nice, and actually I wouldn't even say kind of. It was really nice. So, so as you know, Sanji's kind of floating closer to him, and Luffy's coming, and they're coming closer to each other. Sanji goes and he goes and gears up, or whatever you want to call it, for a magical kick, which is kind of cool, you know. And then he's just like, yeah. And he goes, what does he say? He's, oh, that's what, another thing he was talking about is like a pepper. If you crack it at the right time, it releases the flavor and this and that. And what he's doing is he's just trying to make an analogy for what he's going to do about basically, attacking him with one concentrated attack that's pretty much just going to release all his fury into one kick. And that's what he winds up doing, man. He winds up hitting him, and I don't know what that is, concasser or whatever, but he just right through his ass, man. And then it's nice because you get to see, oh, missing a tooth, eyes glassed over and rolled up into his head. So I think Mr. Ball Boy over here might be knocked the fuck out. And at least I hope he is. So definitely a cool ending, though, to a chapter. And like I said, the first part of it, the neat thing that is masterfully woven that I really like about Oda thus far is that he has a way of not ever making you feel too down and hopeless and depressed. You do feel like that for maybe a couple of chapters at most, but most of the time, like at the beginning of this chapter, last chapter into the beginning of this chapter, you were like, oh great, the Sky Knight is going to fall, and he did. He fell. It's not looking good for him or his bird Pierre or Chopper. But then it goes and it turns that back to something I completely almost forgot about, and that was the whole ball challenge with Satori. And we wind up seeing the tables get turned on him and seeing him get slapped around like a little bowling ball bitch that he is. So it's kind of cool to see that dynamic between the different parts of the chapters and the different chapters themselves. So, and that is really what my chapter question is going to lead to. Certainly we're excited that that it looks like one of the 4 priests has been beaten. But what I would like to know is, what do you think about what I just took the last minute describing? I mean, am I looking too much into it? Or do you think that Oda is very good at doing that? Not making the highs too high and not making the lows too low, so everything does balance out in the end, and you don't have several chapters that are just making you feel depressed and negative, or several chapters that are just like, oh, this is the best, it can't get any better. I think that the neat thing about that dynamic is it keeps you on a constant ride, and it's not so much, it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride, I guess you would compare it to, but really what it does is it keeps you in the moment, it keeps you in the adventure, it keeps you thrilled, and it keeps you wanting to come back for the next one, which I think is certainly something that that I have not seen very often. Let's put it that way. Very often. There's many parts, any type of series, TV, movie, manga, comic, whatever, books, that there's, dull parts to it. And then there's other parts where it's just like, oh, God, I can't take that all in. So I think this does a nice job of balancing it. Wonder what you think, brothers and sisters. Let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, nation.
Say, who enjoys seeing some of that Sanji greatness?
Dipsy doodle.